Do you also have the roller coaster story structure handout burned into your brain? Just me? That's okay. We'll dive into it together for a little refresh on the classic story structure, which includes the exposition, inciting incident, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. Is it starting to ring some bells? Good. Hi, hello, welcome in. I'm Jerica, and I'm an editor, writer, and all-around content creator, and today we're talking about classic story structure in the hopes of building a base for you to build your own stories on top of, as well as a base for looking at some more specific story structures in the future. For a bit of a visual refresh, here is the roller coaster I'm talking about. And I think, more than when I was first introduced to it, that this is actually a great visual for story structure. Of course, we may throw in a couple extra ups and downs, some helixes, some loops, but the basic bits tend to stay pretty much the same. Let's do a quick ride of the roller coaster before diving in deeper to each section of track and building an example along the way. We start with exposition, the first bit of track that is just starting to gain speed. In the story, this is establishing the norm. Its length depends heavily on pacing and genre. Next, we hit the spot in the coaster where we begin our ascent. This is the inciting action, or the point in the story where something throws the norm off balance. Now we begin climbing to the peak. This is the rising action. It's where our main character chooses to do something different in order to reach their goals, and it's also where they're hit with all of the obstacles along the way. After all the tension of failures, successes, and waiting for the other shoe to drop, our main character reaches the goal. But that success changes the status quo, and what goes up must come down. Our cart now plummets back down to Earth. After the climax comes the falling action. This is where our main character realizes that everything has consequences, both good and bad. Just as there were some obstacles on the way to the win, there's going to be a few obstacles establishing the new normal of our main character's life. The ride flattens out, we roll back into the station, and our story's resolution unfolds, where our main character finally assumes the new normal. It's back to the grind of life, but our character and likely their environment has changed. Let's look a little closer at each piece of track, and of course, I'll provide an example going through of what these plot points might look like. Our story is going to be a happily ever after Hallmark-style romance. But that's all you get, because the first step in story structure is exposition, so I might as well use it to expose the context of our story. Exposition, establishing the norm. The exposition section of story structure works to set up the rest of the story. This is where readers get their bearings, learn about and become invested in their characters, and get a feel for the tone and atmosphere of the setting and narrative. This is also where the hook comes in. In the introduction of the story, you need to promise the readers something, set up the stakes and expectations, and grab their attention by creating curiosity. In our expedition, we'll introduce a main character who is working an entry-level job with aspirations to move up in the company, and has also been on a string of bad dates. Maybe we open with her telling her best friend and coworker about her weekend around the water cooler on Monday morning. Immediately we create curiosity and conflict between these two aspirations, introduce a relatable character, and start somewhere interesting where we can show rather than tell about these desires and frustrations. Inciting incident, a change. The inciting incident is where a story actually becomes a story, if that makes any sense. Catalyst is a really good word to describe the inciting incident. This is the moment where everything changes. It's a call to action, a new opportunity, a tragedy, hitting rock bottom. It upsets the normal flow of our character's life. This event provides the opportunity for our character to alter their life course and pursue their dreams, or save their family or business, fix a wrong they've committed, or prove to everyone that they're not the person that everyone thinks they are. A necessary element of a good story is that the main character is changed by the end. The inciting incident is what provides that opportunity. In our inciting incident, at some point during the day or week, it is going to be made known to our main character that a position just opened up in the level above her and they're looking to hire internally first. And applications are due on Monday. To add to the drama of it, she finds out through a rival coworker. They've been around for about the same amount of time, they have similar skills. The inciting incident itself is obviously the job position opening up, but with this scene, we also add internal and external conflict and introduce an antagonist. Rising action, the obstacles. The rising action is a series of obstacles that challenge our main character on the way to the climax and the achievement of their goals. This is where all of that juicy action and tension building happens. It's the will they won't they's of romance, the nagging injuries of action, and the dead ends of mystery. Ideally, each new obstacle is more painstaking than the last. As our story progresses, the stakes are higher and our character has more to lose as they've been gaining little by little through all of their previous wins. Now, of course, not every obstacle needs to be a win. Some failure makes the story a little more interesting most of the time. Slidebacks are part of the game and they help build tension and evoke emotion. Our first obstacle was created in the previous scene by the introduction of this antagonist. But additionally, our character has a date lined up for this weekend. She's forced to make a decision between going on the date and spending all of her weekend working on her application. And later on, she'll have to perform well in an interview. In between these obvious career obstacles, she'll be faced with some workplace drama, a date she actually enjoyed and therefore a budding relationship, and therefore the choice between career and love. Obviously, we won't look at every single obstacle that she'll come up against before the climax, but you get the idea. Climax, the goal, and the release. The climax is the moment where everything seems to fall together. A great weight is lifted off our character's shoulders. This is the final standoff, the saying yes, the murderer being discovered. While the goal may have been reached, we still need to create a little bit of tension, because the change that comes after the climax will change the status quo forever. The climax requires one final obstacle or decision. It's kind of an all or nothing moment. Our climax will be the ultimate decision between career and love. Does our main character choose to do overtime or go on the romantic getaway that their new partner has planned? Since we're going very classic Hallmark, our character is going to choose the romantic getaway. But also consider what story could be told if she chooses the overtime instead, because that's also interesting. But clearly the story isn't over. There's still too many pages in this book. This isn't our happily ever after. Yet. Falling action, the consequences. The falling action is everything that happens because of the climax's outcome. Every action has consequences, but consequences aren't necessarily bad. The fallout is simply the changes our characters have to face. Think of the falling action a little bit like a reflection on the journey. If your character has traveled across the world to save the princess, what did they learn along the way? What has changed at home? How will they react to a life that is less exciting than the one on the road? If your character completed a rehabilitation program, what supports do they have waiting for them? Will they remain clean? What has been added to their lives by being in that program? And what do they have to leave behind? This is where the character and the reader come to terms with the themes and the lessons of the story. It's also where that promise is fulfilled to the reader. This is kind of the mirror to the rising action. We build and build and build the tension, and now post-climax, we slowly release it and bring the story home. Our falling action will have the character coming to terms with maybe not getting the job, but also how she has chosen her relationship over her career. Scenes of the romantic weekend will show how supportive her new partner is of her ambition. When she returns to work, there will be a confrontation between her and the antagonist, who is confident that they have the job in the bag. and this will leave them maybe feeling guilty, and our character will have to come to terms with jealousy, resentment, failure. Our falling action will be a series of silver linings and weighing the good against the bad. Resolution, the new norm. The resolution is where everything gets tied up in a pretty bow. Sometimes. There's always the opportunity for an open ending, but be sure to provide enough closure that your reader doesn't feel betrayed. This is where character arcs end, the story is tied up, and themes come to a head. If a lesson is meant to be learned by the reader and the character, now's the time to nail it home. Don't be too heavy-handed, cover it in some pretty prose, but you get it. If your story is to continue, now's the time to drop a couple hints as to what's going to happen in the sequel. If it's over, you have the option to tie things up super neatly, give all of the information, or you can leave things a little up to interpretation. I have decided to go ever so slightly open at the end of our story, but I am also going the extremely happily ever after route. Not only does our main character choose love over career for a very supportive and fulfilling romantic relationship, it turns out that over that overtime weekend, the rival made some mistakes and choices that proved that they were not the right fit for the promotion, and so our main character is offered it. This is where the little bit of an open ending comes in, is I'm not going to tell the reader whether or not she takes the job. This will allow the reader to consider what the character has learned over the course of the book about how she wants to balance her love and career, and also what she's learned about the relationship she is currently in and how supportive that person is. Is she willing to make that time commitment to the promotion? Or does she want to stay where she is or find a slightly different, maybe lateral move that will leave her open to continue her relationship as it is? That's the end, folks. The roller coaster is over and it's time to hop on another story. So in conclusion, is this story structure right for your story? The easy answer is yes, because every other story structure with nuance follows these basic pieces. That's why we started here. While there may be a more specific structure that would work for you, this is a catch-all option. There are some other structures we can look at, like the hero's journey, the Fichtean curve, the 7-point structure, which are a little bit more specific and detailed and best for certain genres or types of stories. So what's the purpose of learning this? Understanding the structure of a story and following and learning what rules you can break can be very helpful both in outlining and in editing. Being able to label your plot points can help assess pacing. Is your climax too early? Is your exposition taking too long? Are there too few obstacles in the rising action? And it helps you ensure you have a story. Without obstacles, conflict, tension, and especially change, what's the point of the piece? I hope this review of classic story structure has helped remind you of all of those pieces that I feel like we hear a lot about, but maybe didn't grasp when we first learned about them. Use this knowledge going forward to both outline and edit your stories, and make sure you have all your ducks in a row. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to ask them down below. And if you're looking for a maybe quicker, more scannable format to check in on this again later when you are working on outlining or editing, please go check out the blog post. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and learned a little something. I know I had a blast. Catch you next time. Bye. And our story is a revolution. Between these two aspirations, Iggy. Let's take a little... This is the moment where everything changed. Nope. Are going to upset this... Upset.